Lucas was a 13-year-old black boy living in the slums on the outskirts of New Orleans, where every street corner reflected poverty and injustice. His small home, if it could be called that, was merely a rundown shack made of rotting wood and rusty tin sheets. His mother, Mary, was a strong woman, but her frail shoulders had borne too many burdens in life. She worked as a janitor at a factory to earn money to support Lucas, but her meager income was barely enough to cover their basic needs. Every morning, Lucas woke up before sunrise. He got up early to help his mother fetch water from a public faucet over a kilometer away from their home. With 2 heavy buckets on his shoulders, Lucas walked barefoot along the rocky path without a single complaint. Despite living in poverty, Lucas had a warm heart. He always dreamed of a better future, where he could become an engineer and build sturdy bridges to help people in remote areas. At school, Lucas often faced discrimination from his classmates. The wealthy children mocked his tattered clothes and old, worn-out school bag. However, Lucas never let their taunts dampen his optimistic spirit. He always smiled and reminded himself, "I can't give up. I have to overcome it all." One day, on his way home, Lucas stopped to help an elderly vegetable seller whose goods had spilled after a strong gust of wind. The vendor was moved to tears, but Lucas just smiled and said, "Ma'am, helping others brings me joy." These small yet meaningful acts of kindness became a habit for Lucas. Little did he know, these seemingly insignificant deeds were steadily paving the way for an extraordinary future. One rainy afternoon, as Lucas finished helping out at a small auto repair shop near his home, he hurried to get back before the downpour grew heavier. The dark, muddy, and slippery alleys of the slum didn't dampen his determination. Suddenly, in the middle of the deserted street, Lucas spotted an elderly woman lying motionless on the ground. She was wearing an expensive coat, but her face was pale, and her forehead was covered in sweat. Without hesitation, Lucas rushed to her side. "Ma'am, are you okay?" he asked anxiously, but she didn't respond. Realizing she needed help immediately, Lucas, despite his small frame, tried his best to lift her up and guide her to a nearby bench. She was too weak to stand, and the rain made everything even more challenging. Without a phone to call for help, Lucas decided to run to the nearest bus stop to call an ambulance. On the way, he slipped and fell, his clothes and limbs caked in mud, but he got back up and kept running. When the ambulance arrived, Lucas assisted the paramedics in getting the elderly woman onto the vehicle. One of the nurses asked him, "Young man, do you know this lady?" Lucas shook his head, panting, "I just happened to pass by and saw she needed help." He didn't leave his name or address. "I just wanted to make sure she's safe," he said before walking away in the rain. Lucas had no idea that this act of kindness would change his life forever. When Eleanor woke up in the hospital, her body felt lighter, but her mind was still hazy. The last image she remembered before losing consciousness was of a boy with bright eyes and a warm voice. She turned to the nurse beside her and asked, "Where is the person who saved me?" The nurse explained that the boy hadn't left his name or any information. Eleanor's heart swelled with gratitude. She was accustomed to being cared for by high-profile staff. But the selfless act of this boy deeply moved her. Eleanor was no ordinary woman. She was the mother of Michael White, one of the most powerful billionaires in America, and lived a life of luxury and heavy security. Yet, she had always kept a kind heart and cherished stories of goodwill. This time, she was determined to find her rescuer. Michael, her son, quickly learned about the incident. As a busy man who rarely showed emotion, even he couldn't hide his concern. "Mother, I'll hire someone to investigate. You just focus on resting," he said, but Eleanor dismissed the idea. "Michael, you don't understand. This is a special boy. He didn't save me for fame or money. His actions came from genuine kindness. We must find him and thank him." Meanwhile, Lucas returned home, drenched and covered in mud. His mother, Mary, looked at him worriedly. "What happened to you?" she asked. Lucas smiled. "It's nothing, Mom. I just helped someone on the way." He didn't elaborate. As to Lucas, it was just a normal thing to do. Eleanor began her journey to find the young boy who had saved her, unaware that he would bring a profound change to her life and that of her son. After leaving the hospital, Eleanor couldn't stop thinking about the boy who had saved her. She asked her son Michael to use his connections to gather information. First, Michael was skeptical. "Mother, I understand you want to thank that boy, but you don't know his name or any details. Searching for him is like looking for a needle in a haystack." But the determined look in Eleanor's eyes left Michael no choice. He hired a private investigator and instructed him to thoroughly investigate the area where Eleanor had been found. The detective began his search at the nearby bus stop. A driver recalled seeing a boy run to call an ambulance that day, but no one knew anything more. Meanwhile, Eleanor took matters into her own hands. She visited the areas near where the incident had occurred, asking questions of the local residents. As she passed through a narrow alley, her heart grew heavy at the sight of the poverty around her. Ramshackle homes, barefoot children, and weary faces reminded her of her own difficult childhood. Eleanor began to feel that this was no longer just about finding the boy to thank him. It was also about doing something to help the people living there. Michael, though initially uninterested, gradually became drawn into the story. During a meeting with the investigator, he received a preliminary report. "Mr. White, we found a boy working at an auto repair shop nearby. He was wearing oil-stained clothes, matching Mrs. Eleanor's description. I believe he might be the one she's looking for." Michael nodded. Although he wasn't accustomed to personally handling matters like this, he decided to follow up himself this time. A curiosity stirred within him. "Who is this boy? What made my mother so deeply moved?" That afternoon, Lucas was busy cleaning tools at the garage where he worked to earn a little extra money to help his mother. His old, worn-out shirt was stained with grease, and his slender hands moved swiftly with the broom. Lucas worked diligently, despite the meager pay and harsh working conditions. Suddenly, a luxurious car pulled up outside the garage. Lucas looked up, his eyes widening as a distinguished man stepped out. It was Michael White, clad in a perfectly tailored suit and exuding an air of authority. He seemed to belong to an entirely different world. Michael entered the garage, glancing around with curiosity. "You must be Lucas," Michael said, his voice calm but commanding. Lucas hesitated, stepping back slightly in surprise. "Why, yes, sir. But how do you know my name?" Michael smiled. "My mother, Eleanor, is the woman you saved a few days ago. Do you remember?" Lucas froze, stunned. He hadn't thought that his actions that day would lead to something like this. "Oh yes, I just happened to help her. I didn't think it was a big deal." Michael studied the boy for a moment. In his eyes, he saw humility and sincerity, qualities he rarely encountered in his own world. "My mother wanted to thank you. She was deeply moved by your kindness." Lucas shook his head, smiling modestly. "I didn't do anything special. Anyone would have done the same if they saw someone in need." Lucas's words gave Michael pause. In his world, people always calculated their actions, seeking to gain something in return. But the boy before him seemed utterly devoid of ulterior motives. "Do you have some free time?" Michael asked. "I'd like to take you to meet my mother. It would mean a lot to her." Lucas hesitated. He wasn't used to being the center of attention, and the idea of meeting Eleanor again made him a little nervous. But eventually, he nodded. "Yes, I can go." On the way to Eleanor's residence, Michael tried to learn more about Lucas's life. Through snippets of conversation, he discovered that Lucas lived with his mother in a slum and often worked extra hours to support their family. Lucas never complained about his circumstances. Instead, he spoke with a firm belief that the future would be brighter. Michael was struck silent. He couldn't remember the last time he had met someone like Lucas, a person who retained such purity of heart despite overwhelming challenges. A thought crossed Michael's mind. Could this boy teach me, and my mother, something about life? When Lucas entered Eleanor's mansion, he couldn't help but be awestruck. The sparkling crystal chandeliers, opulent furnishings, and expansive space felt like a world apart. But as Eleanor stepped into the room, Lucas noticed that she resembled nothing more than a kind grandmother from his neighborhood. "Lucas!" Eleanor exclaimed with delight. She walked up and took his hands in hers. "I've been waiting to meet you. You're a very special person." "Lucas." Lucas smiled shyly. "I just did what anyone should do, ma'am." Eleanor was deeply moved, but she also understood that this boy lived in circumstances where maintaining such kindness and integrity was no small feat, and in that moment, Eleanor made a decision. She wouldn't just thank Lucas, she would help him change his life. After meeting Lucas, Eleanor couldn't stop talking about him to Michael. That evening, as the two of them dined in their expansive mansion, Eleanor spoke of Lucas's sincere eyes and how he cared neither for rewards nor gratitude. "Michael, don't you see? That boy has such a remarkable heart. Lucas is the perfect example of the goodness in people that we sometimes forget exists," she said, her eyes shining with hope. Michael remained silent, but his mother's words lingered in his mind. Living in the cutthroat world of business, he was used to measuring every action by its benefits. Lucas's selfless kindness left him both surprised and a little ashamed. The next day, Michael went to his office but found himself unable to focus on work. He called his secretary and requested a detailed report on the area where Lucas lived. When the report arrived, Michael was confronted with grim statistics: high unemployment rates, many children out of school, and deplorable living conditions. The image of Lucas with grease-stained hands and bright, determined eyes flashed in his mind. Michael decided to visit the area again, this time not to seek out Lucas but to better understand the lives of the people there. He walked through the narrow alleys, listening to the residents' stories. Each story was a glimpse into their hardships, but also their resilience and hope. He realized that despite their poverty, they held onto a sense of optimism and solidarity. Returning home, Michael felt a growing conviction that he needed to do something, not just for Lucas, but to uplift the entire community. Meanwhile, Lucas had no idea that his encounter with Eleanor and Michael would mark a major turning point in his life. A few days later, he received an invitation from Eleanor, a place in a special scholarship program for underprivileged but determined students. When Lucas received the letter, he couldn't believe his eyes. "Mom, I got a scholarship," he shouted as he ran to Mary, who was washing clothes in the small yard. Mary was speechless. Her hands trembled as she held the letter. "Lucas, I'm so proud of you," she whispered, tears streaming down her thin, weary cheeks. Lucas entered the scholarship program with a mix of excitement and apprehension. The new school was a world apart from what he had known. Most of the students there were from wealthy families, dressed impeccably and carrying themselves with confidence. On his very first day, Lucas caught the stares of a group of classmates whispering about his slightly tight uniform and worn-out shoes. But Lucas didn't let that discourage him. He threw himself into his studies, spending countless hours in the library reading books and completing assignments. Eleanor, despite her busy schedule, frequently visited Lucas to encourage him. She shared stories about her own struggles and how she overcame them through perseverance and faith. However, not everything came easily. Lucas faced new challenges: academic pressure, adapting to an unfamiliar environment, and the judgmental glances of some classmates. There were moments when he doubted himself, feeling that he didn't belong. But in those moments, he thought of his mother and the hopes she had placed in him. Lucas resolved not to give up. "I'll prove that they weren't wrong to give me this chance," he told himself. After his visit to Lucas's neighborhood, Michael couldn't stop thinking about what he had witnessed. He decided to create more opportunities for Lucas to help him grow. One afternoon, he visited Eleanor and Lucas, bringing with him a special proposal. "Lucas," Michael began, "I'd like to invite you to join an internship program at one of my companies. It's a chance for you to learn, and gain real-world experience in a professional environment. Lucas's eyes widened in disbelief. Me? An intern at your company? But I'm just a poor boy. Michael smiled, cutting him off. Lucas, you're not just a poor boy. You're someone special. And I believe you're capable of much more than you realize. This isn't charity. It's an opportunity for you to prove what you can do. Lucas couldn't refuse. A few days later, he started working at one of Michael's subsidiary companies. First, he felt out of place among experienced colleagues and in the highly competitive environment. But Lucas's hard work and enthusiasm quickly caught everyone's attention. Michael watched Lucas from a distance with growing admiration. He didn't just see the boy's progress. He also recognized the determination and kindness that shone through in everything Lucas did. Michael realized that Lucas wasn't just an intern. He was an inspiration to the entire company. The first days at Michael's company were a significant challenge for Lucas. Coming from the slums, everything felt unfamiliar to him. From the sleek, modern office space with polished desks, the well-dressed employees in suits, to the conversations filled with technical jargon he didn't understand, it was all overwhelming. But Lucas didn't let it discourage him. Lucas was assigned to the technical department, where he helped the team review machinery designs. Initially, his tasks were simple data entry and organizing files. However, with his curiosity and passion for technology, Lucas observed and learned tirelessly. He took notes on anything he didn't understand and searched for answers in his spare time. One day, Lucas noticed a small error in the design of a new machine being tested. At first, he hesitated, unsure whether he should speak up. "I'm just an intern. What if I'm wrong?" he wondered. But then he remembered his mother's advice. If you believe what you're doing is right, don't be afraid to act. Gathering his courage, he reported the issue to the team leader. Initially, the team was skeptical, but after reviewing the design, they realized Lucas was correct. If the error hadn't been caught early, it could have resulted in significant losses for the company. From that moment, Lucas earned newfound respect from his colleagues. Though young and inexperienced, he had proven his sharp attention to detail and keen observation skills. He didn't just complete assigned tasks. He proactively sought ways to improve processes. Michael, though busy, kept a close eye on Lucas's progress. One day, he decided to visit the technical department to see for himself. When he arrived, he found Lucas deeply engaged in a discussion with an older colleague about a technical issue. Lucas confidently asked questions and offered suggestions, undeterred by the experience and authority of those around him. Michael felt both surprised and proud. He realized that Lucas possessed not only a kind heart but also remarkable talent and determination. An idea began to take shape in Michael's mind. Lucas might not just be an intern but a potential key player in the company's future. As Lucas gradually established himself at the company, his relationship with Eleanor grew closer. Eleanor often invited Lucas to her home on weekends, where she would spend time listening to him talk about his work and the challenges he faced. Whenever you face difficulties, remember that no one starts a journey without stumbling along the way. Eleanor told Lucas one peaceful afternoon. She poured tea for him and placed a plate of homemade cookies on the table. "You've come much farther than you realize, and you can go even further." Lucas felt deeply grateful for Eleanor's care and encouragement. He began to see her as a true grandmother, someone who always provided him with motivation and confidence. He shared stories about his tough days at school, how he worked extra hours to help his mother pay rent, and his dreams of becoming an engineer one day. Eleanor was moved by Lucas's stories. She didn't just see a kind-hearted boy. She saw a resilient soul who had endured many hardships without losing his optimism. Eleanor's support didn't stop at Lucas. She also made time to visit his mother, Mary. On one visit, Eleanor brought a basket of food and an old washing machine, a gift she knew would ease Mary's burden. Initially, Mary hesitated to accept the gifts, but Eleanor reassured her, saying, "I'm not doing this out of pity. I'm doing it because I'm grateful for your son. He's a gift, not just to me, but to the world. At the same time, Michael also began to change. He realized that family connections, something he had once taken for granted, were more important than anything else. He spent more time with his mother, listening to her recount stories about Lucas and the lessons she had learned from the boy. These stories left Michael feeling energized and inspired. One evening, Michael approached Lucas and invited him to have dinner with the family. "You're not just an intern," he said. "You've become a part of my mother's life and mine as well. I want you to feel welcome here." That dinner marked a turning point. Lucas, Eleanor, Michael, and Mary sat around the table, chatting and laughing like a real family. The meal was simple but warm, filled with laughter and words of encouragement. Lucas realized that although his life had begun with hardships, his perseverance and kindness had brought him not only new opportunities but also a second family. After working at the company for some time, Lucas began to feel the weight of the professional environment. While he had proven his talent and earned the respect of many colleagues, not everyone welcomed his presence. A boy from the slums without prestigious credentials or a privileged background. One morning, during a meeting with the technical team, Lucas proposed an idea to improve the efficiency of a device. His suggestion was based on what he had learned and observed during his work. Some senior colleagues listened and nodded in approval, but a man named Richard, a veteran engineer at the company, sneered dismissively. "Who does this kid think he is, trying to change our designs?" Richard remarked sarcastically. "Interns should just focus on data entry and leave the real work to the adults." Richard's words cast a heavy silence over the room. Lucas lowered his gaze, feeling a mix of embarrassment and hurt. However, he quickly composed himself. Instead of retaliating, he returned to his desk quietly, determined to refine his idea and back it up with concrete data. A few days later, Lucas presented his idea again, this time in a detailed report. Michael, who had been observing from a distance, decided to attend the meeting. He reviewed Lucas's report, checked the data, and smiled in approval. "This plan isn't just feasible. It could also significantly reduce production costs," Michael said to the team. He then turned to Richard. "Richard, instead of dismissing Lucas's ideas, perhaps you should learn to listen." Michael's words were more than just a defense of Lucas. They were a clear message to those resistant to change. Lucas felt a renewed sense of confidence and realized that, despite the challenges, he needed to keep believing in himself. As Lucas continued to work and learn, the story of the poor boy who saved Eleanor began to spread within the community. A small article in a local magazine recounted Lucas's act of kindness and how he had overcome adversity to pursue his dreams. The story quickly caught the attention of larger media outlets. One day, Lucas received a call from a journalist. "We'd like to write an article about you, Lucas," the journalist said. "Your actions have inspired so many people." First, Lucas declined. He didn't want to be in the spotlight. "I just did what anyone else would have done," he said. But Eleanor persuaded him to reconsider. "Lucas, your story could be a beacon of hope for others living in difficult circumstances like you. Let the world see that kindness and perseverance can change everything." The article was published and quickly went viral on social media. People began calling Lucas the Boy of Hope, praising his courage and determination. Charitable organizations reached out to Eleanor and Michael, expressing a desire to collaborate and help children in situations similar to Lucas's. However, fame brought new pressures. Lucas found himself under the curious eyes of everyone, from colleagues at the company to residents in the slums. Some people, envious of his newfound recognition, accused him of using his background to seek attention. These rumors weighed on Lucas, but he reminded himself that he wasn't doing this for fame. His goal was to inspire others and show that change was possible through kindness and resilience. With support from Michael and Eleanor, Lucas decided to start a small project to help the community where he had grown up. He began by organizing free classes for children in the slums, teaching them basic knowledge about engineering and technology. subjects he had once dreamed of learning as a child. In the early days, only a handful of children attended the classes. They looked at Lucas curiously, unsure why someone so young would want to help them. But as Lucas began sharing his story, how he had worked hard to support his mother, how he had once thought his dreams were out of reach, their eyes began to light up. "Lucas, I want to be an engineer like you," said a boy named Jay, his eyes sparkling with hope. "We can all achieve that," Lucas replied, "as long as we don't give up." Lucas's project caught the attention of charitable organizations and donors. Michael decided to support him by providing educational equipment, while Eleanor contributed by organizing fundraising events. During one small press conference, Eleanor spoke passionately. "Lucas hasn't just changed his own life. He's brought hope to an entire community. I believe this young man will achieve incredible things." With the backing of many supporters, Lucas's project began to grow. He not only helped children but also encouraged adults in the slum to join vocational training programs. Gradually, the atmosphere in the community began to transform. Smiles became more common, and long-buried dreams started to emerge. One evening, as Lucas watched the children in his class intently working on their assignments, his heart swelled with pride. "This is just the beginning," he thought. "I won't stop here." Lucas's project grew steadily, bringing hope not only to the children in the slums but also attracting the attention of major corporations and social organizations. However, just when everything seemed to be going well, Lucas faced a challenge far greater than he had anticipated. One morning, Lucas received a letter from a woman living in the slum. She wrote that while he had done many good things for the community, some residents felt envious and suspicious, believing he was only trying to build a name for himself. Rumors spread quickly, accusing Lucas of being merely a puppet for Michael White and suggesting that everything he did was for personal gain. Lucas read the letter with a heavy heart. Although he knew it was impossible to please everyone, he couldn't help but feel hurt that the very people he was trying to help were questioning his intentions. "You can't control what people think," Mary said when Lucas confided in her about the rumors. "The only thing you can do is stay true to yourself." Determined to address the situation with sincerity, Lucas decided to confront the challenge head-on. At a community meeting, he stood before the crowd to explain his project and affirm that everything he was doing came from a genuine desire to improve their lives. "I was once just like all of you," Lucas said, his voice filled with emotion. "I have nothing but gratitude for the community that raised me. What I do is not for fame or recognition. I only want all of us to have better opportunities." Lucas's heartfelt words resonated with many in the crowd. An elderly man stood up and took Lucas's hand. "Son, I believe in you," he said. Murmurs of agreement spread, and the crowd began to see that Lucas wasn't exploiting them. However, Lucas knew that trust is something that takes time to build and must be carefully nurtured. Although Lucas had quelled the rumors within the community, he soon faced another challenge. A large grant he was counting on to expand his project was unexpectedly denied. An international charity organization that had initially promised support withdrew its commitment due to internal issues. Losing this funding forced Lucas to halt plans for new classes and facility improvements. Lucas felt deeply discouraged. He spent many sleepless nights trying to find a solution. But it wasn't just financial hurdles. He noticed that some of the volunteers on his team were beginning to lose faith. A few believed the project had reached its limits and couldn't grow further. "Lucas, we've done the best we can," one volunteer said. "Maybe it's time to accept that not every dream can come true." Those words felt like a dagger to Lucas's heart. Yet, instead of giving up, he decided to seek help. He turned to Eleanor and Michael for guidance. "Lucas," Eleanor said, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Failure isn't the end. It's just a lesson. Remember, you're not alone. We'll find a way together." Michael, who had been watching Lucas's journey from the start, decided to step in. Using his connections, he arranged for Lucas to meet with several philanthropists and business leaders. A gathering was organized at Michael's home, giving Lucas the chance to present his project to a group of influential and wealthy individuals. That evening, Lucas wore a simple suit that Michael had prepared for him. As he stepped into the grand room filled with prominent figures from the business world, he felt a wave of nervousness, but he recalled Eleanor's words, "Just speak from the heart." With a voice full of emotion, Lucas shared his story from his challenging days in the slums to his dream of helping children like himself, and the obstacles he was now facing. He didn't plead for pity, but simply expressed his desire to find partners to help continue his mission. When Lucas finished his presentation, the room fell silent for a moment. Then, an elderly man, a renowned philanthropist, stood up and said, "Young man, I've invested in many projects in my life, but your story is one of the most inspiring I've ever heard. I'll help you." Those words were like a ray of light piercing through the darkness. Others in the room began to applaud and pledge their support. Lucas left the meeting with new promises of funding and a renewed belief that, no matter how tough things got, he could overcome them with perseverance and faith. After the meeting with philanthropists, Lucas received a new wave of funding. This financial support not only allowed his project to continue but also opened the door for expansion. However, Lucas understood that success couldn't rely solely on external help. He needed to build a sustainable team and a long-term plan to ensure the project's survival. Even without him, Lucas decided to hold a community meeting to encourage greater participation from the residents of the slum. During the meeting, he outlined the project's goals: creating a sustainable learning center, organizing vocational training classes, and providing educational support for children. Initially, some attendees remained skeptical. "We appreciate what you've done, but is this really sustainable?" a woman asked. Lucas calmly replied, "I can't do this alone, but if everyone contributes not just money, but also time, skills, and support, we can create lasting change." Lucas's words resonated with many. A new group of volunteers was formed, including both young people and parents from the community. Each person took on a role, from teaching to managing finances to organizing events. In the following months, the learning center began to take shape. An old house in the slum was renovated into a functional learning space with the help of donors. Lucas and the volunteers spent countless hours painting, installing furniture, and decorating the walls with colorful murals created by local children. Although things were progressing well, Lucas faced significant pressure. He often worked late into the night, sometimes feeling exhausted, but every time he saw the smiles on the children's faces at the center, he felt a renewed sense of strength and purpose. Lucas's learning center officially opened on a sunny morning. The inauguration ceremony wasn't grand, but it was warm and meaningful. Children eagerly flocked to the center, where they were greeted with brand new books, computers, and engaging classes. Lucas began teaching basic skills, from computer usage to simple scientific concepts. One of the key messages he emphasized was helping the children understand that they had the right to dream and the ability to achieve those dreams. "Do you know that everyone here has the potential to do great things?" Lucas said during one class. "When I was your age, I never thought I would have the opportunities one have today. But through persistence and the kindness of others, I was able to overcome challenges." Lucas's words were profoundly inspiring. A boy named Jay, once shy and lacking confidence, began expressing his desire to become an engineer. A girl named Lila, with bright eyes and a radiant smile, said she wanted to become a fashion designer to make the world more beautiful. It wasn't just the children. The adults in the community also began changing their perspectives on the future. Encouraged by Lucas's success, some parents joined vocational training classes held at the center. A father who had been an unemployed carpenter found new confidence as he learned to create modern furniture. A mother who had worked as a janitor began taking personal finance management courses. Lucas's center became more than just a place for learning. It became a space where dreams were nurtured and transformed into reality. As the learning center thrived, Lucas faced the greatest challenge yet: One day, he received news that the land where the center operated had been targeted by a major corporation planning to build luxury apartments. The corporation had already purchased most of the surrounding properties and begun pressuring the remaining residents to leave. Lucas felt angry and helpless. He knew that if the center was forced to close, everything he had worked for would disappear. He immediately turned to Michael for advice. "I can't let them destroy the center," Lucas said, his eyes filled with determination. "I have to do something." Michael regarded Lucas quietly. He knew this wasn't just a challenge but also an opportunity for Lucas to demonstrate his leadership. "Lucas, I can help you with the legal aspects, but you need to lead the community in standing up for what's theirs. This isn't just your fight, it's theirs too." Lucas organized an emergency meeting with the local residents. During the meeting, he urged everyone to stand together and protect their homes and the center. "We're not just defending a learning center. We're defending the future of our children," he said passionately. Under Lucas's leadership, the community launched campaigns to draw attention from the media and local government. Photos of the learning center and Lucas's story spread across social media, capturing public interest. A peaceful protest was organized, with residents holding signs that read, "Education is the future," and "Save our center." Michael, leveraging his influence as a prominent businessman, publicly supported Lucas. He used his connections to pressure the corporation and lobbied city officials to reconsider the development plans. Ultimately, thanks to the unity of the community and the power of public attention, the corporation was forced to withdraw. The land where the learning center stood was preserved, and the local government pledged financial support to help expand the center. Lucas couldn't hold back his tears upon hearing the news. He had not only saved the center but also proven that determination and solidarity could overcome even the greatest obstacles. After the victory in protecting the learning center, Lucas became not only a hero in the eyes of his community but also a widely recognized figure across the country. His story appeared on television news, the front pages of major newspapers, and online forums. However, Lucas knew that this newfound recognition wasn't the destination. To him, it was just the beginning of a bigger dream. Lucas decided to use the media attention and support from new sponsors to expand his project. He planned to establish a Hope Academy, a modern educational center for children and adults alike, offering vocational training, life skills development, and opportunities for a better future. This academy won't just be a place for learning, Lucas announced at a press conference. It will be a place where people find hope and the strength to transform their lives. Michael and Eleanor continued to support Lucas, both financially and professionally. Michael introduced Lucas to renowned architects and planners who were eager to help design a facility that was modern yet tailored to the needs of the community. Lucas didn't forget the importance of community involvement in the project. He organized meetings to gather input from residents, covering everything from classroom layouts to necessary training programs. A single mother suggested cooking classes for women wanting to start small food businesses. A tech-savvy boy proposed creating a technology lab for hands-on practice. Lucas took every idea seriously, striving to turn them into reality. Throughout the construction of Hope Academy, Lucas was frequently present at the site. Despite his managerial responsibilities, he wasn't afraid to roll up his sleeves and help. He painted walls, assembled furniture, and planted trees in the courtyard alongside the workers. The image of Lucas, smiling brightly with his hands covered in paint and dirt, became an inspiration to everyone. As the opening days of Hope Academy approached, Lucas felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. He wondered if his efforts would truly make the impact he hoped for. But when he saw the eager eyes of the children and the optimistic smiles of their parents, Lucas knew he was on the right path. The grand opening of Hope Academy was a truly special day. From early morning, the community gathered in the spacious courtyard that had once been barren land. Flags, banners, and neatly arranged rows of chairs adorned the area. Everyone eagerly awaited the moment when Lucas's dream would come to life. Dressed in a simple suit, Lucas stood on stage before hundreds of people, including residents from the slum, sponsors, and representatives from the local government. Beside him were Eleanor, Michael, and Mary, the people who had supported and stood by him throughout his journey. Lucas began his speech, his voice trembling but filled with emotion. Today, we are not just inaugurating a building. We are opening a door to the future, not only for the younger generation but for everyone in this community. When I was a boy living here, I never dared to dream that one day I could achieve this. But thanks to the kindness of people like Mrs. Eleanor, Mr. Michael, my mother, and all of you, I have learned that nothing is impossible. The crowd erupted into applause, and many were moved to tears. Afterward, Lucas joined Eleanor and Michael to cut the red ribbon at the gates of Hope Academy, officially opening the center. As the doors swung open, children rushed inside, their eyes lighting up as they saw the spacious classrooms, modern computer labs, and the lush green garden in the courtyard. One of the most touching moments was when Lucas saw Jay and Lila, two of the first children to enroll at the center, standing in front of a whiteboard, writing their dreams. "I want to become an engineer," wrote Jay. "I want to open a fashion store," wrote Lila. Lucas smiled, feeling as if he was seeing a reflection of his younger self. The grand opening concluded with a small celebration organized by the community. People gathered, shared stories, and felt proud of the miracle they had built together. As night fell, Lucas stood on the balcony of Hope Academy, gazing out at the distant slum. Although the area still faced many challenges, the light from Hope Academy shone like a beacon, illuminating the path forward. He told himself, "This is not the destination. This is just the beginning of a longer journey." Lucas had not only become a leader but also a symbol of unity, compassion, and the power of dreams. His journey continued, carrying with it hope not just for his community but for all those seeking the true meaning of life. After the grand opening of Hope Academy, Lucas quickly realized that his work was only beginning. The academy wasn't just a building, it was an entire system that needed to be run effectively. Lucas faced a range of new responsibilities: managing finances, overseeing educational programs, recruiting teachers, and maintaining relationships with donors. Despite his busy schedule, Lucas was determined not to lose sight of his original goal, ensuring that everyone in the community felt like they were a part of the academy. He frequently took time to meet with students, listen to their stories, and encourage them to overcome challenges. Each week, Lucas held meetings with volunteers and staff to discuss progress and address any issues. One day, during a meeting, a volunteer teacher, Ms. Marie, shared that some older students felt hesitant about joining the classes because they feared being judged. Lucas immediately came up with the idea of organizing evening classes specifically for adults, creating a comfortable and pressure-free environment for learning. "We need to make sure no one feels left behind," Lucas told his team. "This academy is for everyone, regardless of age or background." The evening classes quickly became a huge success. An elderly man, who had previously worked as a carpenter, learned how to use a computer and started an online store to sell his handmade products. A woman, who had spent her life as a homemaker, learned financial management and began her own small business. Lucas felt immense pride in seeing the changes the academy brought to the community. However, he also realized that his role wasn't just as a founder but as a true leader. He began attending management and leadership courses, learning how to build a strong team and sustain the academy's growth for the long term. As Hope Academy continued to grow, Lucas received an invitation to attend a national education conference in New York. The conference brought together education leaders, entrepreneurs, and social activists from around the world to discuss innovative solutions to global education challenges. For the first time, Lucas felt he was stepping into a world he had only dreamed of before. He prepared meticulously for his presentation, sharing the story of his journey from a boy living in the slums to the founder of Hope Academy. His presentation wasn't just about hardships but emphasized how kindness, unity, and determination could transform the lives of an entire community. At the conference, Lucas met many people who shared the same goals. A woman from India spoke about how she had built schools for girls in impoverished rural areas. A man from Kenya described how he used technology to bring education to remote villages. Lucas felt like he had found an international community where everyone was working together for a better world. One of the attendees, Jonathan Greer, a prominent philanthropist in education, was deeply impressed by Lucas's presentation. After the talk, he approached Lucas and said, "Young man, your story is extraordinary. I want to help you expand this model to other areas. The world needs more Hope Academies." Lucas felt both excited and pressured. Expanding the academy was a big dream, but it also required thorough preparation. He agreed to meet with Jonathan to discuss the plans further and began researching how to scale the Hope Academy model while preserving its core values. After returning from the conference, Lucas realized that his journey was no longer confined to the community where he had grown up. He began planning to establish similar centers in other impoverished areas across the country. However, Lucas understood that expansion couldn't be rushed. He wanted to ensure that every new center operated with the same spirit of unity and compassion as the original Hope Academy. To prepare, Lucas organized meetings with community leaders from different regions. He listened to their specific challenges and needs, tailoring programs to suit each area. Some regions required classes in technology skills, while others needed support in basic education and vocational training. Meanwhile, Hope Academy continued to inspire many. A group of university students from nearby schools began volunteering, helping to organize classes and extracurricular activities for children. One of the students, a young woman named Emma, told Lucas, "I used to think I couldn't do anything to change the world. But seeing you, I realized that anyone can make a difference." Lucas smiled and replied, "The world doesn't change because one person does everything. It changes when everyone does their small part." One day, Eleanor visited the academy with a special gift, a large painting depicting Lucas standing among children with the words, "Hope begins with a single heart." The painting was hung at the entrance of the academy as a reminder that this journey wasn't just Lucas's but everyone's. As Lucas looked at the painting, his heart swelled with gratitude. He knew that, although the road ahead was long and full of challenges, he was not alone. He had a community behind him, people who believed in him and were working alongside him to create a better world. Lucas had prepared everything to take the next step, expanding the Hope Academy model to other communities. However, he quickly realized that this endeavor was far more complex than he had anticipated. Each community had its own unique challenges, and replicating the original model exactly was not the optimal solution. The first community Lucas targeted was a struggling neighborhood on the outskirts of Detroit. It was a place plagued by violence, drugs, and unemployment, issues that dominated daily life. He knew that building a learning center here would require not just financial resources but also earning the trust of the residents. Lucas started by spending time living in the community. He walked through streets littered with trash, spoke with families, and listened to their stories. One afternoon, he met a woman named Sarah, a single mother with 3 children. Sarah shared her struggles, explaining how she had always wanted a better future for her kids but felt trapped. "I don't know how to break this cycle," she said, her eyes brimming with tears. Stories like Sarah's strengthened Lucas's resolve. He knew that to make a difference, he needed the active participation of the community itself. Lucas organized a meeting and invited everyone to attend. Initially, only a handful of people showed up. Some even questioned his intentions, suspecting that Lucas might be using the project to promote his own name. Despite the skepticism, Lucas remained undeterred. He stood before the small crowd and shared his own story, how he had overcome poverty and hardship to build the first Hope Academy. "I'm not here to change you," he said. "I'm here to work with you to change our community together." Lucas's heartfelt words gradually dissolved the doubts. Sarah was the first to stand and say, "I'll help. I don't have much money, but I have time. Tell me what I can do. Following her, more people began volunteering their efforts. This marked the beginning of something transformative. Lucas knew that with trust, collaboration, and shared purpose, the Detroit community could also find its own hope and strength. With the support of the community and sponsors, Lucas began building the new center. He chose an abandoned building in the heart of the area, a symbol of economic decline that was now set to become a beacon of hope. Alongside volunteers, Lucas worked tirelessly to renovate the structure. The walls were painted in bright, welcoming colors. Classrooms were equipped with modern desks and technology, and a small garden was created outside to serve as a relaxation space for everyone. However, the construction process wasn't always smooth. One night, while Lucas was working late at the center, he heard the sound of shattering glass. A group of local youth had thrown rocks at the windows, leaving graffiti scrawled across the walls. Lucas understood this act as a sign of frustration from those who felt left out or skeptical of the project. Instead of getting angry, Lucas decided to reach out to the group. He approached them not as a critic but as someone willing to listen. At first, the young men refused to talk to him, but Lucas didn't give up. One day, he invited them to visit the center and see what was being built. "If you don't believe in this project, come help me make it better," he said. The leader of the group eventually agreed. "All right, we'll give it a try," he said with skepticism. But as the group started helping with the renovations, they began to feel they were part of something bigger. They became protectors of the center, volunteering to assist other workers and organizing meetings to discuss ways to make the project successful. As the center neared completion, Lucas organized a small opening ceremony to thank everyone who had contributed. During the event, Sarah stood up to speak. She told the crowd, "This center isn't just a building. It's hope for me, for my children, and for all of us." Sarah's words moved everyone deeply. Lucas realized he wasn't just building educational centers. He was rebuilding trust and pride within the community. He watched as children ran and played in the center's courtyard, and adults chatted and laughed together, filling his heart with immense joy. That evening, sitting with his team of volunteers, Lucas said, "We've done something amazing, but this is just the beginning. Let's keep working, keep dreaming, and keep bringing hope to the places that need it most." While the new learning center in Detroit was running smoothly, an unexpected disaster struck. A powerful storm swept through the area, causing significant damage to homes and infrastructure, including the center Lucas had just built. Part of the roof was torn off. Rainwater flooded the classrooms, and many pieces of equipment and books were ruined. Upon hearing the news, Lucas immediately flew to Detroit to assess the situation. When he arrived, the sight of the devastation weighed heavily on his heart. Volunteers and local residents had already gathered to clean up and salvage what they could. Lucas immediately joined in, helping move equipment out of the flooded areas and securing the remaining parts of the building. One evening, after a long day of hard work, Lucas held a meeting with the volunteer team. "We've overcome greater challenges than this," he said with determination in his voice. "We will rebuild, not just the center, but the spirit of this community." Lucas began reaching out to donors and partners to seek support. Some responded with immediate pledges, but others declined, citing the risks of rebuilding in a storm-prone area. Undeterred, Lucas launched a community fundraising campaign, using social media to share the story and call for help from those who had been inspired by the Hope Academy initiative. The campaign quickly gained traction, attracting attention not only nationally but internationally. People who had followed Lucas's journey felt moved by his resolve and contributed whatever they could. One man in California, after reading the story, sent a generous donation with a note, "You are an inspiration. Keep lighting up the darkest places." Within a few weeks, Lucas had raised enough funds to begin the rebuilding process. But more importantly, the storm had brought the community closer together. Residents who had once been skeptical or indifferent to the project now volunteered to help rebuild. They realized that the center wasn't just Lucas's. It belonged to everyone. Together, they worked to restore what had been lost, laying a foundation stronger than before. Lucas saw that the storm had not only tested their resilience, but had also transformed the center into a true symbol of unity and hope for the entire community. As the Learning Center in Detroit was rebuilt, Lucas realized that his project was having a far greater impact than he had ever expected. The community wasn't just improving its infrastructure, it was undergoing a transformation in spirit. People who had once felt abandoned, resigned to apathy and frustration, were now starting to believe that they could change their lives on their own terms. One person who particularly stood out to Lucas was Malik, a teenager who had been part of the disruptive group Lucas encountered when he first arrived in Detroit. Malik, who had once been skeptical and disillusioned, had now become one of the most active supporters of the center. He learned how to repair computers, organized skill-building classes for younger kids, and even began dreaming of starting his own tech business. Lucas, Malik said one evening as the two of them painted a wall at the center. "I used to not believe in anything, but you showed me that if you try, things can really change." Lucas smiled, placing a hand on Malik's shoulder. "I didn't do anything special, Malik. It all came from you. You chose to believe in yourself. And that's what matters most." Malik's story not only inspired those within the community but also motivated Lucas to keep expanding his project. He began working on a new plan, developing mentorship programs where people like Malik could become role models and guides for younger generations. Lucas believed that, for his project to be truly sustainable, he needed to create a self-sustaining ecosystem where community members helped one another thrive. The mentorship program was launched quickly and was met with enthusiastic support. Malik, along with several other young adults, became the first mentors, guiding younger kids and inspiring them to pursue their dreams. Lucas saw that each person in the community had now become a seed of hope, ready to spread light and belief to places that needed it most. After his successes in Detroit, Lucas received an invitation from an international organization to present his model at a community development conference in Geneva, Switzerland. It was a significant opportunity but also a daunting challenge. Lucas had never imagined himself standing before global leaders to share his story. Michael, who had become both a mentor and a close friend to Lucas, encouraged him to accept the invitation. "Lucas, this isn't just an opportunity to share your story. It's a chance to inspire and expand your model to places that need it most." Lucas spent weeks preparing his presentation. He didn't just want to tell his story but to convey the message that any community, no matter how impoverished or forgotten, could transform through belief and unity. When he arrived in Geneva, Lucas was awed by the city's grandeur and modernity. But he quickly reminded himself that he was there not to feel small but to represent communities that had once been like his own. During his presentation, Lucas shared not only his journey from a boy in the slums to the founder of Hope Academy, but also the stories of people who had inspired and been inspired by him, like Sarah, Malik, and the residents of Detroit. He concluded his speech with a heartfelt call to action. "We cannot change the world overnight, but we can start today with one community, one person, and one dream." As Lucas stepped off the stage, the entire room rose in applause. Many approached him to shake his hand and express their admiration. A woman from Brazil told him she wanted to implement his model in the favelas of her country. A businessman from South Africa promised to provide financial support for Lucas to expand his project to Africa. Lucas returned from Geneva with a renewed sense of purpose. He wasn't just building learning centers. He was spearheading a global movement of hope and change. He knew the road ahead would be challenging, but he also knew he wasn't alone. He had a larger community, a world ready to join him in bringing light to the darkest places. After his success at the Geneva conference, Lucas became a global symbol of change. Letters, invitations, and messages poured in from all over the world, from NGOs, businesses, and individuals eager to contribute to his project. However, Lucas understood that true success didn't come from fame but from taking action. Lucas decided to scale his project to other countries. With support from international sponsors, he began building learning centers in some of the most challenged regions. One of the first projects was in Brazil, in a slum in Rio de Janeiro. This community faced severe issues such as gang violence, unemployment, and a lack of basic education. When Lucas arrived in Rio, he felt a deep connection to the place. It reminded him of the slum he had grown up in. However, the differences in language and culture presented new challenges. Determined to bridge the gap, Lucas began learning Portuguese to communicate directly with the people. Each day, he walked through the narrow streets, talking to residents and understanding the struggles they faced. Lucas met a man named João, a retired teacher who had once dreamed of opening a school in the area but lacked the resources. João became Lucas's trusted partner in establishing the learning center in Rio. With João's help and the support of local volunteers, the new center gradually took shape. At the center's opening ceremony, João stood before the crowd and said, "We are not just building a structure, we are building the future." Those words deeply moved Lucas. He realized that his project wasn't just about creating a series of learning centers. It was becoming a global movement of hope and transformation. The project continued to expand to Africa, Asia, and other regions. Lucas didn't just build learning centers, he connected communities, creating a global network of people who believed in the power of education and compassion. Years passed, and Lucas was no longer the boy from the slums but a respected global leader. Hope Academy had grown into a network of hundreds of learning centers in multiple countries, transforming the lives of millions. Yet, Lucas remained humble and grateful, always remembering his roots and the reason he began this journey. One day, Lucas returned to the slum where he had grown up. The once impoverished area had transformed. The streets were paved, houses had been renovated, and the first learning center Lucas built still stood proudly as a symbol of hope. Children played in the center's courtyard, laughing and running around. Lucas felt his heart swell with happiness. At a ceremony celebrating the 20th anniversary of Hope Academy, Lucas stood on stage before thousands of people, from those whose lives had been changed by the centers to donors and volunteers. Beside him were Eleanor, now elderly but still with her warm smile, and Michael, who had been by his side throughout the journey. Lucas spoke, his voice filled with emotion. "When I was a child, I never imagined I could change the world. I just wanted to do something to help my mother, to help my small community. But from one small act, from one person's kindness, we have created a global movement together. Hope Academy doesn't belong to me. It belongs to all of us, those who believe that hope can change everything." After his speech, Lucas was awarded an international honor for his contributions to communities worldwide. But for Lucas, the greatest reward was seeing the change in people's eyes, from despair to hope, from helplessness to determination. That evening, Lucas sat outside his first center, gazing up at the starry sky. He thought back to the day he first met Eleanor, the small yet meaningful act of kindness that changed his life. "It all begins with kindness," he whispered to himself, "and kindness will continue to spread." Lucas's journey didn't end there. He dedicated the rest of his life to bringing light to the world's darkest corners. And in every place he visited, he left behind an indelible legacy, a legacy of hope, compassion, and the power of unity.